it's hard to change paths and change jobs and try new things for a lot of reasons. Number one, like a lot of people burden themselves financially to the point where they can't take 4 years off to go get a degree to see if they like whatever, or they can't leave the job site and try what hairdressing or whatever they think they might be passionate about. Another thing is it's hard to be a beginner again. Like it's very hard to say, I'm fairly competent at this, but I don't care. I'm going to leave this behind. I've built up this skill set. And like, let's say for myself in power engineering, it's like I went to school for this. I did practicums. I have some specific knowledge. I'm getting paid incredibly well. I know it's probably not an exact fit, but am I really willing to give it all up and start at the bottom again? And it's like, it's friggin' a hard decision. Although I do think of a quote, I can't remember who said it. It's like, how many people, if you climb up, you're climbing a mountain for your whole life and you're trying to summit it, but you get 3/4 of the way up and you realize you've taken the wrong path and you have to climb that all the way back down and restart. It's like, it's a daunting task.
Totally it is. And then I guess, like, how do you, like, is there a way to, I'm thinking like high school students here, like I'm reflecting back on myself in high school. Like I had a very clear idea of where I wanted to end up and what I wanted to do. But, I would say that I was the anomaly of my friend group, I was 1 in 10 that kind of had that idea. But how do you expose individuals to career paths, to different options, like without kind of subjecting them to that sunken opportunity? You know what I mean? Like that, how do we get exposure to like these different options without kind of creating like a big amount of debt that then needs to be paid off? Or like it's interesting. Like I wonder if there's ways that we can do that in kind of the way that the education system is set up at this moment, or is it always just going to be kind of how it is?
Well, do you think now with podcasts, YouTube, and people putting out content, like you can have mentors or whatever, you can learn from people from any field essentially at all times?
Totally.
And I'm shocked at just how much I've learned about so many different fields just from listening to people on podcasts. So I guess that's one mass exposure that's taking place in our society. But I've found the downside to that is it filters for incredibly exceptional individuals, and it starts to we've talked about this a tiny bit in the past. For me, it starts to shift what you think is reasonable and realistic. You start to think it's like, okay, well, what are my options for a career? Like when I was in my early 20s, I'd listen to so many pods. It's like I need to be an incredibly well-renowned professor or a CEO of a innovative tech company or whatever, stand-up comedian or whatever, like a hugely successful stand-up comedian. It's not exactly realistic because it filters for the most successful.
Totally it does. Yeah, absolutely.
So I'm not sure if that's a great solution. I don't know. Do you have any ideas on that? Like if you could help out high school people in some way, what would you say?
Yeah, honestly, like to me, I find that shadowing just such a valuable experience. You know what I mean? Like being at the job, seeing the kind of people that are in that field. Because I think there's something to be said about finding your people and like who you really fit in with. You know what I mean? I noticed that in medicine that there were different fields that different like fields would attract different kind of personalities, and that it was very easy to find like a group of like-minded people in different fields. And it wasn't like a huge deal, but there was definitely like you'd see like the humor would be a little bit different here versus people would be a little bit more organized in this field, or like there was traits that different fields kind of attracted. Whereas when I was in construction, that was like a completely different kind of individual that the dinner conversations that I was having on the construction site, I actually had to like really work on that because I had spent so much time on the construction sites that you go into medicine and then all of a sudden you're like sitting there and you're like, oh, okay, like you got to be really careful here. Like we got to change things up a little bit because you're used to working on the job, and that's a completely different culture than it is there. So
I often felt,
think that having exposed, I was saying like, I think if we could do like a month or two that students had to like clock like 20 different professions that they went and shadowed for a day or two, you know what I mean? Like send them to follow a registered massage therapist for a day, or like make them go and seek these opportunities out and like explore these different career paths. Go and follow a framer for a day, go and follow a barber for a day, go and follow a doctor for a day. And I understand that like there's feasibility issues there, but you know, if you could do something along those lines, I think that might perhaps expose a few more people. I don't think it would be like a universal thing, but I feel like, you know, it might at least plant a couple seeds. And who knows?
Great idea. So something I've noticed that's been kind of interesting, and I think it's true. I know it was true for me coming out of high school. You're exposed to so few careers, or your ideas of what careers are possible are so limited that it's like 80% of high school students graduating are probably aiming at like one of 5 careers. I've been helping select recipients of a scholarship, so I get to read all these applications, right? And I've noticed it's like, what do you want to be out of high school? It's like doctor, lawyer, teacher, nurse, engineer, right? So that's like 80 or 90% of people, just because like you're saying, it's hard to know exactly. But once you go through university and things, you realize like how many fields there are out there. Yeah. I mean, is there even something wrong with that though?
Totally.
Yeah. Like,
is there? But I mean, the follow-up question to that is, have you ever read a paper that says, you know, I want to be a respiratory therapist? Like, phenomenal career that like nobody knows anything about, you know what I mean, in healthcare, that like if I had been exposed to it in high school, that very much could have been something that I ended up pursuing. But I had no idea it existed, right? So it's like, yeah, it's interesting.
Well, with on the last podcast, the first one I did was with Hunter, my buddy, my power engineering buddy, and we kind of explored power engineering, or that was the intent of our podcast, and it was for that exact reason, because it changed our lives remarkably, right? Like it's a fantastic career, and so few people know about it that there's something so valuable about having that aim, and it's much less costly and it's shorter, and you're able in your early 20s to come out, have a huge salary in comparison to the average, and then figure out what you want to do. And you're still only 21 and you've already essentially made a stable living for yourself.
Totally.
Yeah. Totally. Those tech programs they're very underrated. Very underrated.
Oh, where's this podcast for 16-year-old me?
You're too busy playing video games or something. You're definitely not. Yeah, it's tough though. It's tough. Like, yeah, I guess just individually, it's like if you can, I don't know, maybe coach or find a way to be around younger people and hopefully be a decent role model. I mean, when I think of my life, it's like the role models I've had have really pointed me in the right direction.
Totally invaluable.
It's like, yeah, people are going to figure it out. I don't know if you can even like point them or even move them. It's more they watch your actions and mimic if they're admirable.